This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi called Columbus, and sometimes I write about the rest of the state. Tonight's episode is about a flim-flam man and the juries of Reconstruction Era Columbus, Mississippi. Reverend Pleasant Bowler arrived in Columbus, Mississippi sometime after August 1865, several months after the close of the Civil War. He had most recently lived in Richmond, Virginia. However, his home, as far back as I can find in recorded history, was originally Racine, Wisconsin, where he is listed as a member of the clergy in 1858. Racine was a stop on the infamous Underground Railroad and a gateway to help fugitive slaves escape into Canada prior to the Civil War. Wisconsin was the first state to declare the Fugitive Slave Act unconstitutional. In 1865, soon after the war ends, Bowler arrives in Richmond, Virginia via Boston as a, quote, suffrage worker. In other words, helping newly freed, formerly enslaved people register to vote and to start school and learn to read and write. The local white papers claimed these workers, predominantly clergy, were there to, quote, civilize the newly freed men and women. By November of 1865, the Second African Baptist Church, to which Bowler was attached, is appealing to the local Freedmen's Bureau to remove their new pastor, Bowler, for alleged claims of adultery and stirring up strife among the membership, according to the November 14th, 1865 Freedmen's Record. Further, they held that Bowler had held meetings at the church without the knowledge or consent of Second Baptist Church's White Advisory Committee. It was claimed that Bowler refused to resign and had assaulted members and had made threats of murder to a church trustee. Bowler was eventually acquitted of the allegations. However, he was removed by the church and the Freedmen's Bureau as pastor of the Second Baptist Church. On January 6th of 1866, Brother Bowler was at a church in Richmond for a Christmas celebration at the neighboring African Methodist Episcopal Church as a guest of its pastor, Burrell. Bowler got drunk and began cursing the deacons of the church who tried to remove him to a room away from the festivities. He at some point threw a half-pound bag of cayenne in the air, causing a quick hullabaloo, as several of the women tried to help sober him up. Brother Burrell was furious with Bowler, and as he felt Bowler was not only trying to cause problems, I guess a bag of cayenne pepper would do that, but he was also trying to allegedly take Burwell's church away. And Bowler had gone so far as to acquire a set of keys to the building. It was then this case, too, was brought before the Freedmen's Court, who made Bowler turn over the keys to Burwell. By late January of 1866, Bowler is despised by the people of Richmond, and an anonymous note is published in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, hoping Bowler gets poisoned and his, quote, black talkworm expelled, end quote. It was about that time that Brother Bowler, his wife Mary, and 2 kids leave for New York City. We never hear of Mary or the children again, none that I can find anywhere in any of the newspaper clippings that exist. By spring of 1866, Pleasant Bowler has come to Columbus, Mississippi to speak at a church conference and revival at the Columbus Colored Baptist Church. His preaching was so powerful that the church offered him a full-time position as their pastor. He agrees, but they must agree to pay him $500 a year with $125 up front and provide accommodations, in other words, room and board, and clothing. 3 months into the arrangement, the church discharged Bowler and the congregation split. One half stayed at the church and one half going with Bowler to Burns Bottom's Shiloh Baptist Church, a church building that was recently destroyed. The original church deacons, led by James Lull, the clerk of the church, not the James Lull that built the courthouse, someone with the same name. The clerk of the church called Bowler a bad man, an impostor, and not a minister. Allegedly, Bowler had refused to provide any credentials after weeks of telling the deacons he would. Then he said he lost his church credentials in a valise while traveling through Chicago. James Lull filed suit on behalf of the church versus Bowler, who he claimed had, quote, cheated and defrauded the church of $125. Several male members of the church testified that Bowler had a questionable character. Rochester Gregory, Harrell Blewett, and others claimed that Bowler was a bad drunk. Roland Patterson, also a member of their church, testified that Bowler was a fine man who discharged his duties as a pastor just fine. On the 30th of October of 1866, Bowler was found guilty, fined $100, and given 90 days on the county work farm, a brutal sentence for a man unused to manual labor. However, in the fall of 1868, Pleasant Bowler represents the Shiloh Baptist Church in McMinnville, Tennessee, at the Tennessee Conference of the Methodist Episcopal Church. Bowler returns to Columbus after the conference, and his congregation and the Reconstruction managers of the town. The 14th Amendment had recently been ratified that same summer, and Union soldiers still controlled the town of Columbus and the courts, like all other Southern towns of that era. In 1869, the African American community leaders rose up and, with the help of the Freedmen's Bureau and Sheriff Cline, moved to force Bowler out of town. They are tired of him and his shenanigans. Radical Sheriff Cline moved to take Bowler into custody and across the river, and instead they had to arrest him for resisting and claimed he was, quote, inciting a riot. The paper alleged that Bowler was armed with a gun, a sword, and a pistol. Bowler ceased resisting the deputies and the sheriff, but according to the local paper, the, quote, scoundrel Bowler, who was terribly powerful among blacks, stopped resisting, allowed himself to be relieved of his guns and sword, and began to accompany Cline back to the jail. Apparently, Bowler pretended to trip and stumble and pulled a pistol from his pocket and shot the sheriff in the shoulder and the chest and wounded a deputy as well. Bowler was then put on trial in September of 1869. Judge Brown, an Ohio native and a Union appointee, brought in an all-black male jury pool, something unheard of in Lowndes County prior to September of 1869. According to multiple papers, this was the first all-black jury in the United States. There had been several instances in this same era where 1 to 2 jury members were black. However, as far as I can find, this is the first all-black jury in America. Blacks would lose this privilege again post-Reconstruction in the South due to Jim Crow laws. But back to the trial itself. The jury found Pleasant Bowler not guilty of the crime and freed him. According to one of the jurors, the paper stated that this particular juror thought Bowler was guilty, but that the jury foreman threatened him to say he was innocent, quote, or else. Another jury member, according to the paper, was alleged to have been collecting money for Bowler for his defense. Now, these are all white papers with all white authors, of these articles. So I don't know how much stock we put in those reports. Bowler remained in Columbus after the trial, even though he was found innocent. In November of 1869, Bowler spoke at a political group called the Dent Club. According to the Clarion Ledger, it claims that Bowler was one of the, quote, ablest men of his color, per the newspaper. Bowler spoke at a packed courthouse with Colonel W.H. Sims and Austin Jones, where Bowler slammed Robert Gleed as a dangerous radical. Bowler disappears from record until June 1871, when a Lynchburg, Virginia paper reports he is arrested in Stanton, Virginia, for threatening to kill a parishioner of the local Shiloh Baptist Church. The Staunton, Virginia Shiloh Baptist Association is then reported to have told their Virginia association that Bowler had left for Richmond and he is, quote, wicked, dangerous, and lewd, and that he had threatened violence, engaged in gambling, drunkenness, and other unholy practices, and should be reported widely in order to protect other congregations. Wow, very strong statement. In July of 1872, Bowler is found at the Christian Church in Knoxville, Tennessee, conducting 2 services and Sabbath school each Sunday, per the Knoxville, Tennessee Daily Press in an advertisement. He also publishes a letter to the editor of that paper in response to a slanderous anonymous letter that demeans his ability to preach. Bowler disappears from public record again until he is found once more in the Richmond, Virginia Planet newspaper in 1896, listed as one of the speakers at Second Baptist Church's Golden Jubilee. Pleasant Bowler clearly was a charlatan and a flim-flam man. But perhaps the real story here is not the man, Reverend Pleasant Bowler, but the all-black jury in Reconstruction era Columbus, Mississippi. Was it really the first all-black jury in the United States? More research is clearly needed. But if there are any other historians out there who care to chime in, I would be eager to know more about your thoughts and your findings and any documentation you can find to support or refute that claim. This is the Tom Bigby Tales. I want to thank you for joining me. Until next time.